I'm Sue Beecher. I live here in Irvington, as many of you know, and I also have the honor of being on the Irvington Historical Society Board. An even bigger honor this morning is being here at Bonnet Thompson Center with Paul Diebold, author of Greater Irvington II. And so we're going to talk about Paul's new book, which, by the way, shameless plug, I think this is the kind of Christmas gift you have to buy for your loved ones. So good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Sue.
So tell us, I know you did a Greater Irvington I, so tell us what's different in this book.
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, we found some new information about parts of Irvington that are a little more outlying, and maybe people might not consider them to be parts of Irvington proper, but you know, for example, a little bit north of 10th Street, we found information about developments on the commercial corridor on 10th Street that we didn't have full information about 20 years ago, believe it or not, 20 years ago when we did the first book. So there's additional historic photographs that we didn't know about at the time, and additional information about areas like Pleasanton, the Par 10 area, which is up by 10th Street and the Parkway, the area north of the golf course. We even have a little bit of Emerson Heights in there, since we're all part of this 20th century development of Irvington. But we've continued the theme of the book, which is basically that the architecture of the east side of Irvington, of Emerson Heights, of all these places around this area tells the history of the community if you know what to look for.
So Paul, I got my copy very early. I didn't want to be without a copy of this, and so I started reading it. And it strikes me, it's just so stunning, the amount of detail that you have on these houses, many of them way over 100 years old. Can you give some insight to our listeners on how you do your historic research and how you come up with so many great details on these homes?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question, and I can't take full credit for that because this time around I had a great editorial team. I had Bill Gouldy, Don Flick, the Schmitz, and Steve Barnett, who's the Marion County historian, who's our executive director here at Bonnet Thompson Center. And before that, the first time I was largely flying solo. So they were able to keep me on the straight and narrow and correct a few errors, and that was a big help. But a couple things I could show you. Now, using abstracts to do house research isn't a new thing. And this is actually the abstract for my own house. This is what one of these things looks like. And you can see this starts with a map with the lots. Whoops, a little bit more than it was. Then all these chain of title of all the different owners of the property. So now we had these the first time around when we did the book, but we found some other ones for parts of Irvington that really shed some light, some very interesting light on some economic problems, a few other things that affected the development of parts of Irvington that we just didn't know. The other thing that I used quite a bit of the first time around are these newspaper articles. These are just printouts of them. And you can see this one actually right here is about a house that's in Irvington that's up north of the Parkway and just south of 10th Street. And we had some of these the first time around, but I went back and dug a little deeper. This one's from 1931, so I began to look at the interwar years, and so I used these 20 years ago for the book. I used them before that to study other neighborhoods in Indianapolis, but was able to dig deeper, and these are just invaluable. They have a historic photograph. Sometimes they have floor plans. They mention the architect or builder of the house, and it's just information you're not going to get any other way. And you know, of course, now we have OCR scanning with newspapers, and you can do a directed search in an address. But these actually you find the old-fashioned way, you go to the Sunday paper, and here they called it the Home Builders Clinic in 1931. And you find those in the same part of the paper every day, and you try to see, well, what part of town is it about? Which part of town is featured? And fairly often in the 1930s, there was a lot of growth in Irvington, and again, these are just very valuable. A lot of these houses aren't high architecture, if you will, and things like newspaper articles are really the only way you're going to find very much about them.
Fabulous. So, were there some surprises, and can you share some of those with us?
There were. Some of the historic photographs we found. There's a great photograph of a root beer barrel. Now, this was a structure that stood on Washington Street about where the circular children's room is on our current library building that's at Washington Street and Ottoman. So this was a sheet metal structure that mimicked the shape of a giant root beer barrel. And the open part of it along the center was open so that people could stand inside and serve you root beer on a counter that matched the circular opening around the perimeter of the structure. So this was a surprise to us. It came out of the blue. Someone sent us photographs. He was living in Florida. He happened to live in an apartment just down the street from where I live. And he said, "Did you know about this?" And of course we said, "Oh, we did not know about this incredible structure." And he talked about being a student at Butler in the 30s. So Butler by then was on the north side. And that he earned extra money working at this root beer barrel. So that was a big surprise. The other surprise, in the abstracts, we had information about some economic hard times in Irvington. We had vague references of this in histories of the community, that after the community was founded in 1870, things were going well for a few years, then there were these hard times, and we didn't know what that meant. It was actually, there were some lawsuits flying around. This involved the Pleasanton area of Irvington, over by Emerson and Pleasant Run Parkway, and then north towards 10th Street. That whole chunk of land was owned by an early settler, and there was a legal dispute. And so that kind of clarified for us what these economic hard times meant. Irvington actually, as a town, was sued and lost money, and so and obviously they were embarrassed about that. Even years later, in 1912, when they were writing some of these community histories, now we know at least part of the story of what that meant. So there were some nice surprises.
Wow, I didn't know either of those things, so I can't wait to read about both of those in the book. If I was wanting to research, and I'm not sure many people understand that Irvington Historical Society is really a gem for this neighborhood and the city of Indianapolis. There are very few counties in Indiana, or very few towns, that actually have this kind of history and the effort to find it, document it, and share it with the neighbors. So if I wanted to research my house, if I were starting that process, what resources could I find here at Bonnet Thompson, Paul?
Well, actually, a lot of homework has been done for you here at Bonnet Thompson Center. Steve Barnett, the Marion County historian, who is our executive director I mentioned earlier, he has compiled city directory research and census research on almost every house in the community. And so he's kind of selected 3 or 4 years for each property, and found residents and found a little bit about them. So you have that head start. We have those in giant binders here. At some point, we'll figure out some way of digitizing that. Well, we do have it digitized, I guess. It's on a Word. It's in a Microsoft Word or Excel program of some kind. But we'll find some way of getting that out. But for right now, you would come here and you could start your research here. That's difficult right now, but that'll be changing in the upcoming months, of course, as we work our way through this crisis. So there's that. If you want to do some of this at home, if you have extra time on your hands, and gee, I think some of us do these days, you can go to the IUPUI digital collection online, and they have city directories. And so these city directories have a cross index at the back, so you can look up your street address and it tells you who lived there. Then you can take that name, go back to the alphabetical part at the front, and very often it will say what they did for a living. So that's a fun way. I guess as a historian I could say it's fun. Some people wouldn't find it that way, but it's a fun way of doing research. You can do it yourself at home. Those city directories are cross-indexed, I think starting about 1914 is when they started doing that. Before that, you're sort of looking for a needle in a haystack because they didn't do the crisscross directory at the back. That crisscross directory at the back of the city directory is a really key part of that. And other communities have that. For example, there's an online service that has digitized the city directories for Fort Wayne, Indiana. And they actually have OCR scan them, so you can plug a name in and it'll pull up the references. So there's a couple tools. Other communities in Indiana, it's hit or miss as to whether you'll have a city directory. Most of the bigger ones do.
Also the state library.
Yes, the state library has those resources as well.
So one year for Christmas, I was the lucky recipient of a set of copies of newspaper clippings on my home, courtesy of Bill Goldie. It's a lovely gift that I still cherish to this day. He had simply gone and looked through microfiche, what I call microfiche, to find all references to my home at 308 South Audubon Road. And so I have quite a bit of my history on my home. I don't know that people understand that not only are we fortunate to have a historical society here in Irvington, but it is completely run by volunteers. No one gets paid for their work here, no one gets any kind of reimbursement. And so we survive, if you will, on sales of books such as Greater Irvington II. And so Paul, can you tell folks who I'm sure are going to want to be purchasing this for Christmas gifts and birthdays, how they can get a copy of this great book?
You actually can go ahead and order it online, and we do shipping, and we are going to have pickup times, and so that's, as you go to our website, that's actually one of the first things you see is how you can order the book. So you can get there and you can order the book. We have about 100, or no, actually I read this morning, I think it's more like 60 or 70 copies, because we've already sold 30 of this next 100 that we've printed. So you want to get to that pretty quickly. And actually, I just thought of something. You asked what's new. The cover itself is new. That is a photograph we did not know existed. And if you've ever been to an antique store and you've seen the stereopticon photographs, they're kind of like two images pasted on a piece of cardboard that you would put into a reader and it would make them focus together. So somebody, someplace, took a photograph of the Sylvester Johnson house when it was brand new in Irvington, and we found that image online. We purchased it, and that's what's on the cover of the book. Brand new image, or rather a new to us image that we did not know existed.
Wow, I love stories like that, and I'm anxious to be able to get back into antique shops and search for things like these. But of course, online eBay, we found many things here for the museum on eBay as well. So if you're not interested in buying the book, which I cannot imagine where your state of mind might be if you have that opinion, not that I have my own opinion, but there are other ways to support the Historical Society here in Irvington, and one is to purchase a membership. And I think that they are
$25.
$25, thank you, Peg. And really, we have remained open with a lot of precautions here during this pandemic. And so our volunteers have continued to offer this as a destination for you during the COVID pandemic. And we have great displays. Currently we have a display on local artists here in Irvington and Indianapolis. Some of those works are for sale. We also have some donations that have been given to the Historical Society that are for sale as well. So I would recommend, if you have the interest, that you get online, look at some of the things we have for sale, some of the other publications, and of course Greater Irvington II, and consider doing your last minute Christmas shopping, if you will, online and through the Irvington Historical Society.
Okay, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this week, folks. I'm pretty sure we're going to try to do something about some Luminaria history, Luminaria Night history in Irvington next week. And until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have the best holiday that you can. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.